At age 82, my life is rich with experience, but one decision casts a long shadow of regret: moving into a nursing home. At the time, it seemed like the sensible thing to do. My family advocated it with assurances of comprehensive care and comfort. I trusted their words. However, the reality I encountered upon arrival was very different from the comforting picture painted for me. I am aware that many of you may be considering this very option, either for yourself or for a loved one. Perhaps you feel it is the safest choice, or perhaps you have been led to believe that it will make life easier. But before you take this irreversible step, I feel compelled to share 6 crucial insights, the very things I wish someone had told me before I made the move. Because the truth is, living in a nursing home goes beyond mere convenience. It fundamentally changes the fabric of your existence. And once you cross that threshold, the road back to your former life is far more arduous than you can imagine. Please stay with me to the end, as some of these realizations may profoundly surprise you. Moreover, if you know someone who is struggling with the decision to enter a nursing home, this video may be just the message they need to hear before making such a life-altering decision. So let's start with the first regret: the erosion of my independence. The most profound shock of entering the nursing home was not the confines of the small room, the regimented meals, or even the unfamiliar faces that surrounded me. It was the stark realization that I had relinquished control over the direction of my own life. Before moving in, my days were structured by my own choices. I determined when I got up, when I ate, and how I spent my time. I had the freedom to take a leisurely walk whenever I felt like it, prepare my own meals with familiar ingredients, or simply find solace in my favorite chair with a beloved book. Within the walls of the nursing home, however, I quickly understood that my time was no longer mine to command. Every aspect of my day unfolded according to a schedule dictated by others, a rhythm that was not my own. Breakfast was served at a precise hour, regardless of whether I was hungry. Lights were turned off at a certain time, regardless of my readiness to sleep. The simple desire to go outside for a walk often required asking permission and waiting for staff to be available to assist me. Basic decisions, such as what to eat or even what to wear, began to feel more like granted privileges than fundamental personal choices. I vividly remember my first week there, waking up in a bed that lacked the comforting familiarity of my own. I sat up, stretched, and instinctively reached for the book that had been my companion at home. But as my eyes swept the sterile room, the truth hit me with a chilling force: this was not my home. My cherished books, my comfortable chair, the small tokens of comfort I had accumulated over the years, all were gone. In their place were impersonal walls and an unfamiliar bed, an environment I had not chosen. A lingering unease settled within me, the undeniable feeling that I was no longer the architect of my own days. The most painful aspect of this loss was the dawning realization that once you give up your independence, regaining it is an almost insurmountable task. You adapt out of necessity. Stop questioning the prescribed dinner menu. Stop inquiring about spontaneous walks. You learn to fit into their system, but in the process, a part of you disappears. If you are contemplating a move to a nursing home, I implore you to consider whether you are really ready to give up the small freedoms that define your individual life. For once they are gone, their absence will be felt with an intensity you cannot now imagine. Regret will inevitably creep in, accompanied by a deep sense of being forgotten. One of the harshest realities of moving into a nursing home is the gradual but undeniable realization that the world outside continues its inexorable march forward, often without you. When I first arrived, my family offered heartfelt assurances of frequent visits. I believed them, and for a time their promises held true. My daughter visited once a week, my grandchildren on weekends. In those early weeks, a fragile connection to my former life remained. But as the months passed, the regularity of their visits began to wane. My daughter's visits became phone calls, her physical presence replaced by the disembodied sound of her voice. My grandchildren, caught up in the currents of school and work, became increasingly absent. The holidays were especially poignant. Promises of get-togethers were made, but unforeseen circumstances always led to last-minute cancellations. I would suddenly find myself sitting alone in a common room, watching other residents with blank stares at the entrance, each silently hoping that this would be the day they would be remembered. It was not that my family's love had waned, rather, the complexities of their own lives had simply intervened. When you are not a constant presence in their daily lives, it is easy for others to assume a state of well-being, an adjustment made, a diminished need for attention. But the stark truth is that the longer you remain within the walls of a nursing home, the easier it becomes for those outside to forget the depth of your continued need for their presence. I remember one lonely evening in my room, phone in hand, wrestling with the decision to call my son. The fear of being a burden held me captive, the reluctance to remind him of my existence, my quiet anticipation of a visit that might never come. And so I hung up the phone. In that silent act of resignation, the weight of my new reality crashed down upon me. This was my life now, a passive observation of the passing days, a silent hope that someone would remember to include me in their world. If you are contemplating a move to a nursing home, I urge you to face the question of loneliness honestly. For regardless of the depth of your family's love, once you are out of their daily sight, the ease with which you fade from their immediate thoughts is a sobering truth. If you continue to engage with this video and find these insights valuable, please acknowledge your presence by leaving a comment with the number to below. And if you haven't already subscribed, I encourage you to do so and enable the notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. Now let's move on to the third regret, the erosion of my sense of purpose. When I moved to the nursing home, I thought I was just changing my physical address. I did not realize that I was also fundamentally altering the reason for my existence. In my own home, I had responsibilities, a comforting framework of routines and hobbies that provided a reason to greet each new morning. Even the seemingly insignificant tasks, watering my plants, making my own coffee, organizing my living space, gave my days a sense of purpose and contribution. But in the structured environment of the nursing home, these familiar daily rituals disappeared. Meals were prepared and served to me, cleaning was efficiently handled by someone else, and the plants that had once been my responsibility were now beyond my care. At first, I tried to convince myself that this would be a welcome respite, a long-awaited opportunity to finally relax, free from chores and responsibilities, to embrace a life of simple rest. After a few short weeks, however, a profound sense of emptiness began to gnaw at me. The days stretched endlessly, devoid of meaningful activity, filled only with the act of waiting for time to pass. I observed the same emptiness in other residents, individuals who had once exuded energy, now spending their days in quiet stillness, their gazes distant, simply existing until the next scheduled event. There was a man named George, 84 years old, a carpenter all his life. At home, his hands were never idle, always busy fixing things, crafting small projects in his beloved garage. But here there were no tools, no projects, nothing for his skilled hands to create. I watched as he slowly withdrew into himself, his once strong and capable hands now resting idly in his lap. "I feel useless," he confided to me one day, and I understood his feelings with painful clarity. When there is nothing to care for, nothing to strive for, life begins to lose its inherent meaning. The mind, deprived of purpose, begins to slow down, the body follows suit. And soon you feel like just another anonymous resident in a place where time continues its inexorable march, but nothing of real significance ever seems to change. If you are contemplating a move to a nursing home, I implore you to think deeply about what truly gives your life meaning. Because once you move in, rediscovering that meaning is far more complex than simply filling your time with activities. It becomes a daily struggle to hold on to the things that make you feel alive and engaged in the world. Regret number 4 focuses on the unexpectedly rapid decline of my health. Before I entered the nursing home, I was relatively fit and capable for my age. I wasn't running marathons, but I could still manage my own care, take long walks, and prepare my own meals. I had established small, consistent routines that kept me physically active: grocery shopping, morning stretches, even just moving around the house to maintain the strength in my legs. But when I moved in, everything changed. At first, it felt like I was just taking it easy, enjoying a well-deserved break. Meals were brought directly to me, eliminating the need to stand in the kitchen and cook. If I needed assistance, a simple push of a button would summon help. What I did not anticipate, however, was the insidious effect of reduced activity. The less I did for myself, the more my physical strength began to decline. My daily walks became less frequent, and soon my legs felt stiff and resistant to movement. I spent more time sitting than ever before, and before I fully realized it, the simple act of getting up from a chair became a significant effort. The muscles I had spent years maintaining were disappearing at an alarming rate, and this wasn't an isolated experience. I witnessed the same decline in others around me. People who had been able to walk independently soon became dependent on wheelchairs. People who had once taken care of their own basic needs now needed assistance with tasks they had never struggled with before. It seemed that the more help we received, the more dependent we became. I remember my neighbor Alice, an 81-year-old woman who was vibrant and full of life when she first arrived. She made it a point to take daily walks around the facility, adamantly stating that she wouldn't let age dictate a slower pace. But after only a few months, I noticed that her walks were getting shorter and less frequent. Soon she began using a walker, and then a wheelchair became her primary mode of transportation. One day she looked at me with a puzzled expression and said, "I don't know when it happened, but I feel like I've aged 10 years in just a few months." And that was the feeling. When you stop actively using your body, you begin to lose its capabilities. And in a nursing home environment, where everything is designed for ease and comfort, it's easy to forget that movement is not just about physical comfort, it's fundamentally about survival and maintaining vitality. Had I understood how quickly my strength would diminish, I would have fought with every fiber of my being to keep moving, to stay active, to push myself even when I lacked the motivation. If you are considering a nursing home, I urge you to honestly ask yourself, will you still have the intrinsic motivation to keep your body strong if your entire environment is structured to minimize physical exertion? Because once you allow yourself to slow down, the process of regaining your strength and mobility is far more challenging than you might currently imagine. If you are still watching this video and find these insights valuable, please acknowledge your presence by commenting number 4 below. And if you're not already a subscriber, I encourage you to sign up and enable the notification bell so you don't miss future videos. Your support allows us to continue to create informative and inspiring content. Now let's move on to my number 5 regret, the significant loss of privacy and dignity. One crucial aspect I didn't fully consider before moving into a nursing home was the extent to which my privacy would be compromised. In my own home, I had the sanctity of my personal space. I could close my bedroom door, enjoy moments of quiet solitude whenever I wanted, and conduct my personal affairs on my own terms. But within the confines of a nursing home, privacy becomes a luxury that is not always attainable. From the moment I arrived, I felt a constant sense of being watched. With staff routinely entering and exiting, scheduled room checks, and common areas where true solitude was a rarity. Even basic personal activities, such as dressing or using the bathroom, often required the assistance of another person. While I understood that the staff were simply doing their jobs, it is not easy to readily accept help with tasks that you have spent your entire life performing independently. I vividly recall those first few weeks, struggling with the unsettling realization that I now had to ask permission to do things I had previously taken for granted. Want to take a shower? You may have to wait for staff availability to help you. Need to use the bathroom? Sometimes pressing the call button meant waiting longer than was comfortable or dignified. Even dietary choices were limited. If the menu of the day did not appeal to you, well, that was often the only option available. Then there was the issue of roommates. Not every resident is afforded a private room, and sharing a personal space with someone you did not choose can be a source of considerable frustration. While I was fortunate to have a compatible roommate, I heard numerous stories from others whose experiences were far less positive. Some had roommates who were disruptive due to noise, uncleanliness, or even cognitive impairments that made restful sleep nearly impossible. And no matter how diligently you try to personalize your room and make it feel like home, it is never truly yours alone. Dignity is a precious and fragile thing to lose, and I did not fully understand the extent to which mine was being eroded until I was living in this environment. When people knock but do not always wait for an answer before entering, when you are addressed as a patient rather than as an individual, when your entire daily routine is dictated by a schedule you had no part in creating, it fundamentally changes your sense of self. You begin to feel less like the unique person you have always been and more like another name on a list, another resident to be managed. If you are considering a nursing home, I implore you to honestly consider whether you are ready to give up the privacy and control you have cherished all your life. Because once it is gone, regaining it is an incredibly difficult and often daunting process. My sixth regret is the sobering realization that leaving a nursing home is far more difficult than one initially believes. When I first moved into the nursing home, I had the idea that it was a temporary arrangement. I thought I would try it out, see if it was the right fit, and if it wasn't, I could just go home. What I failed to grasp, however, was the tremendous difficulty of extricating oneself once ensconced within its walls. At first, the prospect of leaving seemed simple. If I wasn't happy, I would simply go back to my own house. But home was no longer the same. My house was empty. My children, acting with what they believed to be my best interests in mind, had already begun making changes, selling possessions they considered unnecessary for me, and even considering renting out the property. When I tentatively broached the idea of returning home, their response was hesitant and laced with concern. "Are you sure you can make it on your own?" they would ask. "Wouldn't it be safer for you to stay where you are? We only want what's best for you." Then there was the undeniable reality of my own physical decline. After months of living in an environment where I was relieved of the responsibilities of cooking, cleaning, and even extensive walking, my physical strength had diminished considerably. The independence I once took for granted was slowly slipping away, making the prospect of moving back home a far more daunting undertaking than I had ever imagined. My confidence in my ability to live independently had eroded, and this fear became a significant barrier that kept me feeling trapped. I met others in the facility who were in the same predicament. They had initially viewed the nursing home as a temporary solution, only to find that leaving was not the easy decision they had envisioned. The longer one remains within its walls, the more difficult it becomes to readjust to life on the outside. Some residents even found that the option of returning home was completely foreclosed. Once their homes were sold or their savings depleted by the escalating cost of care, there was simply no going back. This is the critical aspect that often goes unmentioned. Moving into a nursing home can feel like a reversible decision, a trial period, but for most people it is anything but. The nursing home slowly becomes their entire world, and before they fully comprehend it, the outside life they once knew begins to feel like a distant and unattainable memory. If you are considering a nursing home, I implore you to seriously consider the possibility that once you enter, leaving may not be as easy as you think. For once you are settled, the barriers to leaving, whether financial, physical, or emotional, may prove far more formidable than you currently anticipate. If you are still watching this video and find these insights valuable, please acknowledge your presence by commenting with the number 6 below. And if you're not already a subscriber, I encourage you to sign up and enable the notification bell so you don't miss future videos. Your support allows us to continue to create informative and inspiring content. Surah Tuman. Final thoughts. Looking back on my life, I don't regret the process of aging itself. But I do deeply regret believing that a nursing home was my only viable option. I entered expecting to find comfort, safety, and an improved quality of life. What I found instead was a world that gradually took away my independence, my privacy, my sense of purpose, and even my sense of self. Does this mean that all nursing homes are inherently negative environments? Not necessarily. For some people, the level of care they provide is truly necessary. But before you make such a profound decision, I urge you to think carefully about what you might be giving up. Because once you move in, your life will be irrevocably changed. If I had the opportunity to make that decision over again, I would have fought harder to stay in my own home, explored a wider range of options for support without sacrificing my freedom, and made sure with absolute certainty that such a permanent move was truly necessary before committing to it. And if you are currently facing this very decision, I sincerely hope that you will take the time to introspect and ask yourself, is this really what is best for me, or is it simply the path that seems easiest at the moment? Because the life you have today, your routines, your independence, your choices are treasures worth holding onto for as long as humanly possible. Thank you for joining us today. We would love to hear from you. Please leave a comment below and share a key takeaway from this video and how you plan to apply it to your own life or the life of a loved one. Your thoughts and experiences are important to us, so please feel free to share them in the comments section. Reading your feedback motivates and encourages us. If you found this video insightful and helpful, please consider liking it, subscribing to our channel, and sharing it with others who might benefit from this information. Your support plays a vital role in allowing us to continue to create valuable content to inform and inspire you. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to connecting with you in our next video.